In American Industries Group, we believe in partnership. We team up with our suppliers, associates, and you to complement our strengths, generating a synergy that results in a successful project. We have developed a company focused on partnering with you so that you can achieve your goals by creating a success story in Mexico. American Industries, partner for success.
Hello, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, depending on where you are right now. We, on behalf of Federación Mexicana de la Industria Aeroespacial, FEMIA, Mexican Federation of Aerospace Industry, and MEXICONOW, we would like to welcome to all of viewers that are connecting to this webinar through the Zoom platform. Also, we are transmitting live on Facebook Live, and we also would like to inform that we will be posting this webinar on our YouTube platforms, both on MEXICONOW and FEMIA platforms as well. So, having said that, also we would like to thank our today's webinar sponsors. Which is Altair, American Industries, International Logistics Solutions Company, ILS, Intermex, Mankiewicz, and the state government of Zacatecas. So thank you, sponsors, to making this come true. Also, I'm gonna go ahead and explain very briefly how this webinar is organized, the program for today. Basically, we will introduce each of the panelists, which each of them will give a brief presentation on their respective organizations. Then after we have done that, we're gonna proceed to what is the most important part of this webinar, which is the open discussion, with some different subjects that we're gonna touch. Everything concerning about the collaboration between the three aerospace industry sectors of the three countries that conform the most dynamic and important region in the world in this sector, which is North America. And then after that open discussion, we're going to open a Q&A session from questions from the public, from the audience. We certainly would like everybody that may want to have a question to put your questions in the Q&A chat that is in the platform right now, so that we can actually read your questions and then make those questions to the extent possible to the panelists. So now we're gonna proceed with our first panelist today, which is Mike Mueller. We're gonna start with Mike Mueller. Mike acts as a Senior Vice President for the Aerospace Industry Association of Canada, the AIAC, and he's in charge of operation and strategic direction for the association. And he has an extensive background in management for different associations, and also he has served as a chief of staff for diverse agencies and ministries for the Canada's federal government, including the Treasury Board, Public Safety, and International Trade. So, you know, certainly I would like to welcome Mike. Mike, thank you very much for being with us. You know, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you here. And you know, we have been working lately very closely. So, you know, we are very happy that you're here. So we're gonna proceed and, you know, switch over to you so that you can give us a brief presentation about the AIAC. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Luis, for putting this together. We also value the collaboration between your association in Mexico and also AIA. So it's just a real pleasure to be here, especially at this time with COVID-19. And I think you can all agree that cross-border collaboration is even more important during a time like this. So I just want to, thanks again for the opportunity, and I just want to give a bit of a snapshot as to what the Aerospace Industries Association of Canada is all about, a little bit of an overview of our industry, but I'll be brief because I know we'd like to get to the discussion, which I think will be the most interesting portion. So we represent about 90% of Canada's aerospace activity. We've been around since the 1960s. And much like most associations, which you'll hear about, we represent the industry's interest at our federal national government level. We develop partnerships across Canada and across the globe, such as this, to maximize our members' value. We do a lot of items such as policy program reform, regulatory legislative framework development, business development opportunities at both the domestic and the international level. And we run two major aerospace events in Canada, one being the Canadian Aerospace Summit in Ottawa, Ontario, which is the nation's capital, and that usually happens in November. And then the Aerospace Defense Security Expo in Vancouver, British Columbia, which happens in August. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19 this year, we've had to cancel the Vancouver show, and we'll be postponing the Ottawa show, but I look forward to working with you, Luis, to make sure that when we're allowed to have these shows again, we get a good representation from Mexico. If we could just go to the next slide, please. So we do things like creating value for our members, boosting growth competitiveness. Actually, last year, we put together a Vision 2025 exercise, which was a bit of a roadmap and recommendations for the Canadian industry on how to position our industry for success over the next 10 years. And we have recommendations of those, which actually fit in very nicely with our AIC technical committees, which you can see on the screen. And those technical committees are an opportunity for our member companies to have discussions about matters specific to those topics, and then also to tie in the Vision 2025 exercise and recommendations. And we feel that a lot of those recommendations are even more critical now with the COVID-19 pandemic. And then the other thing that we do, which has taken quite a bit of our time during the COVID-19 pandemic, is a bit of a concierge service to our members. So troubleshooting issues that they have with either the government programs that are in place to support COVID-19, and really trying to bring the industry together with pertinent information and timely information as things seem to be changing, especially early on a week-by-week basis. If we can go to the next slide, please. So just a bit of a snapshot of the industry. You'll recognize some of our companies, Bombardier, Viking, de Havilland, Airbus with the A220, and other companies with significant Canadian presence like Pratt & Whitney, Safran, Bell, Mitsubishi Heavy Industry. I could go on. Very dynamic, very diverse industry, and it's a large country, but it's spread across the country with manufacturing strengths in Eastern Canada, and then maintenance, repair, overhaul strengths, particular to Western Canada. We employ around 215,000 Canadians. A large portion of our output is export related, 80%, and we contribute 25 billion to the economy in the GDP. So it's very important for us to keep borders open, to keep the collaborations like this ongoing, which is why I'm pleased to be here and look forward to having the discussion. Thank you, Louis.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Now, I would like to call up Remy Nathan. Remy is a Senior Vice President for Policy for the Aerospace Industries Association in the United States. And he is basically responsible for industry actions on trade-related issues affecting international commercial and military aerospace markets. He is definitely has been involved in different initiatives, like, for example, improving the export control systems, and also a global ethics initiative, which is very important for industry, and also fair market access for import and export. So, Remy, you know, also it's a pleasure and an honor to have you here. You know, we know you're on the road right now, so we certainly appreciate even more the effort to be here with us. So, Remy, welcome, and you know, the microphone is all yours.
Thank you, Luis, and the pleasure and honor are both mine to be able to join you, Mike Mueller, and Philippe Sandoval on this important and timely webinar. I'd also like to take a moment before I provide an introduction about AIA to thank the sponsors that help make this program possible. As an association executive, I think Luis, Mike, and I all know that the sponsors are the lifeblood of the type of work that we do. With that, if we could bring up the slides. And next slide, please. Next slide. So AIA last year celebrated its 100th anniversary. And over the course of that 100 years, our organization has served as the leading voice to advocate for the interests of U.S. civil aviation, defense, and space manufacturers of all sizes, large, medium, and small. Next slide. We focus our efforts across three primary areas of focus. We support our industry's advocacy for effective federal investment in aerospace and defense, primarily in the defense sector, but also space and civil aviation infrastructure within the United States. The lion's share of our work, of course, is about policy and regulatory framework, both domestically and internationally, in which our companies operate. Our goal, as always, is to make sure that policymakers and elected officials understand both the contributions of our industry, but also the needs of our industry, that we are able to work in a context that is predictable, efficient, and transparent, and allows for the competitiveness of our companies, not just domestically, but globally as well. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, within AIA, we have a very strong focus about ensuring that our industry has access to the best and the brightest talent, to ensure that our industry has access to a 21st century workforce capable of ensuring the type of innovation and productivity that is the hallmark of the North American aerospace and defense sector. Next slide. A couple of other activities that AIA does that we're quite proud of. We have an AIA Supplier Management Council that provides a forum where the small and medium-sized companies that in many ways are the lifeblood of our industry are able to interact amongst themselves and also with the heads of supply chain for all of the major nationals that are members of. And as we look forward as well, the other activity that I'll talk about are air shows. And of course, we normally would have been talking about the Farnborough Air Show right now, and unfortunately we're not in the midst of this current crisis. But like its partners in Mexico and Canada are very active participants in the international air show front. And we play a rather unique role in air shows in that we serve as a logistics support provider for all of the U.S. military aircraft and U.S. aircrew that are exhibiting at international air shows around the world. In both cases, even as we are collaborating with AIAC and FEMIA on this particular webinar, look forward to exploring opportunities to collaborate in the SMC and on air shows as well as we continue to go forward. Next slide. And then finally, back to the point about workforce, and I'll be talking a little bit more about this in hopefully in the next couple of minutes or so. Would like to highlight AIA's activity with the Team America Rocketry Challenge, the American Rocketry Challenge rather, rebranded. A wonderful activity that allows kids to get a firsthand experience about what aerospace and defense industry has to offer. And of course, always trying to highlight that in our industry, we're not limited by our focus on the world around us, but constantly looking at the stars and working with groups like National Geographic and Scholastic Magazine. Next slide. And that's it from me for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Remy. Thank you for being with us. Now we proceed with our next presenter, our next panelist, which is Philippe Sandoval. Felipe is the chairman of the board for the Mexican Aerospace Industry Association, for FEMIA. And also he acts as a general manager for Safran Seats passenger experience and aerosystems operations, where he is responsible for 5 plants and 8 business units that have an operation of more than 3,000 employees in Mexico. He has an extensive background on operations, engineering, program management, and supply chain for many different global companies across Latin America, the United States, Asia, and Europe. So Felipe, welcome. Thank you, and microphone is all yours.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Good to have you here. Can you please start with the presentation? I will introduce basically the core of the FEMIA, the Mexican Federation of Aerospace Industry, very similar to our Canadian and US associations. We basically cover similar subjects. Please go to the next one. Okay, so basically we gathered the main aerospace companies in Mexico. All the OEMs and tier ones basically are part of FEMIA. We are similarly a private non-profit organization established in 2007 and more than 100 members. And as I said, we gathered main OEMs and tier ones, but we also have a significant amount of tier twos and tier threes. We have a presence in 30 states of Mexico, which are the states where are consolidated and most of the companies in Mexico related to aerospace. And also we act as the sector private representative with the Mexican federal government in terms of regulations and coordination. Next. So this is an example of all the main companies that are part of this 110. Of course, there are enough room to put the 110 logos here, but this is a good representation of most of the representative companies part of the FEMIA. Next. We have also an extensive collaboration with our North American partners, as well as with others like France, GIFAS, or South America, and Germany, Belgium. So we have an international collaboration with the main companies related to aerospace industry and also the main aerospace associations in all those countries. Next. Our governance is related to these different 9 commissions. We have Honor and Justice, which basically lead the governance of EMEA. We have a committee for competitiveness, another for promotion, also for human talent formation, which is leading by the UNAC, the National Aerospace University Dean. We have a technical commission, which is basically the one that is coordinated all the technical regulations with the government. Supplier development, basically to help and assist companies that are interested in getting into the aerospace industry. Institutional relations, which is mainly all the government relations and international activities. Space, we have a special commission for space. We are beginning to develop, let's say, that portion in Mexico, so especially in satellites development and manufacturing, as well as MRO. We have significant MRO companies in Mexico as well. That's a surging activity. Next one. Mexico has been an outstanding growth in the last 14 years. We have been growing at a 14% average annually. Certainly, probably this year is going to be different because of COVID-19, but previous to this year, we have been having a sustained growth year over year. We have about 368 industrial facilities. Most of them, of course, is manufacturing, but also we have 43 MROs shops, as well as 40 design and engineering activities, which is pretty significant for aerospace industry. We have about 60,000 jobs, direct jobs, in 19 of the 32 states in Mexico, and very close to 80,000 to 100,000 of indirect jobs. So totally, the aerospace industry may represents 120 to 180,000 jobs in all Mexico, directs and indirects. We reach an export of 9.6 billion, and we are moving to the 6th place as exporting country to USA, which is the main market for aerospace industry. And certainly we have been increasing our partnership with North America, with Canada and US significantly in the last 10 and 12 years. And certainly Mexico is the associate partner in North America to provide competitiveness to the region. So Mexico is currently global ranking in number 12 and moving forward to become the number 10 in the next 4 or 5 years. Next. Okay, this is a very brief summary of what FEMIA is. Very similar activity to our partners in associates in Canada and US. Thank you.
Thank you, Felipe. Thank you for your presentation. Now we're going to continue with basically the core part of this webinar, which is the open discussion by our panelists. We certainly would like to remind you that if you have any questions that you may want to make to the panelists that from any of the 3 countries, put it in the Q&A section in the Q&A chat on our Zoom platform, so that we can actually see the questions and see how can we formulate those questions to the panelists. Before proceeding, we will have a very brief message that will take a little over 1 minute, and then we move on to the open panel discussion. Please don't go anywhere, and we will get back right away to start with the panel discussion.
Are you looking to expand your manufacturing business globally while improving your bottom line? Mexico is your answer. Intermex, your partner. Intermex is one of Mexico's most important manufacturing management support and industrial real estate providers. Our customer portfolio of more than 200 international manufacturing firms benefit from effective establishment, operation, and continued success. Additionally, we present our clients with the opportunity to further reduce costs and optimize operation performance by utilizing different management strategies such as shelter, startup, Mexican entity management, specialized services, and our multi-tenant and shared facility option. If Mexico is your choice of destination, Intermex will provide you with highly competitive advantages for the support and experience that can enable your venture to succeed. Think Mexico. Think Intermex.
Okay, now we're going to proceed. We're going to ask our panelists to join in this this platform, Remy, Mike, and Felipe, so that we can start with our open panel discussion. We're going to start first with a very interesting subject for the three countries, which is supply chain opportunities within the region. Industry supply chain is somehow very, very complex and global. And now there is a trend in developing more alternatives to suppliers in order to reduce dependence from single source suppliers. Many of them are from Asia. How do you perceive the North American region countries can collaborate in order to seize the opportunities arising? Are there any other opportunities than that the three countries may be aware of in terms of supply chain integration? How do you perceive this supply chain integration? I would like to start with Mike, if he has some take on this. Mike?
Well, thank you, Luis. Yes, I mean, I guess just to back up on COVID-19, I think COVID-19 has really put into focus supply chain challenges and the need to diversify for the large OEMs. And that's one of the items that we keep making to our government also. So at the beginning of the pandemic, we ran into a situation on deemed essential services within Canada, within different provinces, and that really started to shine a light on the need for consistent, harmonized approach to these matters, but also the need to ensure that the supply chain is broad based, and there's also different opportunities. So I am extremely bullish on the North American supply chain opportunities, and I think COVID-19 has really put that into focus, and I'm excited about the collaboration with the three of us, and also I think there's a couple key items that play in our favor. One is proximity. We have companies in British Columbia that cross the border every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, trading back and forth. And so keeping the borders open, fighting against any form of protectionism will be absolutely key. And then also the shared experience and shared experience through NAFTA and the new CUSMA, or whatever it's called now. I know there's a couple different names there. So I think we definitely have some building blocks to build upon, and I'm extremely bullish on the next steps.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. Felipe, could you tell us a little bit about supply chain integration?
Yes, we experience a huge impact because of the COVID-19. The aerospace industry in general, in particular in our countries in North America. One particular situation of the aerospace industry is that we are not plenty of different suppliers for a particular commodity. In a big difference with automotive, which every company have 5 or 6 different suppliers for every commodity. In our case, it's not the case. We have a significant amount of concentration of suppliers and commodities. And for every commodity, we may have 1 or maximum 2 suppliers. So it happened that that supplier is one of the very affected regions. Basically, that stopped the supply chain. That was a very hard lesson for all of our companies. And certainly, this opened a huge opportunity for North America for several reasons. One is, the first lesson is we need to have a supply chain which is very high reliable, let's say. And certainly in North America, the more reliable countries are the 3 members of the USMCA agreement. So, you know, for political reasons, military reasons, for neighborhood reasons, economic integration, etc., etc., etc. So certainly Mexico, US, and Canada are the most motivated, let's say, countries to maintain the partnership, to develop the economic cooperation and development, and certainly to develop sources in the North American region in order to maintain the supply chain integrated and reliable. That's one first hard lesson. And the second lesson is, of course, the aerospace industry could not rely in a single source. So we need to develop at least 2 sources in different countries, you know, in order to minimize the potential of break in the supply chain for any reasons. You know, COVID-19 was a good opportunity for all of us to learn a lot of lessons. And certainly the level of confidence and trust among the 3 countries, Canada, Mexico, and US, is very high. And certainly, you know, are the most, let's say, preferential area to develop further, you know, our supply chain. Because, of course, we are in the neighborhood. We are in a 6-hour flight, 5-hour flight. You know, if we need to visit our supplier in Canada or in US or in Mexico, maximum 10 hours flight, you know, we can be there in the same day. The connections, the interaction, normally we are 1 or 2 hours difference in time. Our long relationship in terms of culture of work, industrial ethics, a lot of different stuff. That means this particular situation a great opportunity for increase significantly our cooperation and integration in aerospace industry among the 3 countries. One also big mega trend that we have observing in the 90s, we started a big trend of globalization. But in the last 5 or 6 years, we are now looking at trend of regionalization. So Europe is concentrated more, Asia is concentrated more, and North America has to follow that trend as well. So we need to integrate and collaborate further more in order to be competitive with other regions that are much more comprehensive and cohesive among them. Certainly North America has to do the same. It wants to remain competitive and compete with other regions. I would say especially Asia, no? I think it's our main region competitor for us. So we need to keep pushing in that direction in order to remain North America competitive with other regions of the world.
Remy, your comments on supply chain.
So I agree with everything that Mike and Felipe said. When I think about this question, my mind goes to the challenge of education, really, education and advocacy. Um, because at the end of the day, while I think all of our companies individually, particularly those that are very active in cross-border business, take for granted the type of relationships that Felipe described around the North American supply chain, for perhaps some of our companies that are not as active in cross-border business, and certainly among many of our government officials, they don't know necessarily as much as they perhaps should, that at the end of the day, how much our industry relies on the integration of a global supply chain in general, and how, in particular, critical the North American supply chain is for the success of all of our industries in each country and collectively together. In that regard, I do encourage all of the folks watching this webinar to consider how they can become more active or join, if they're not already members, organizations like FEMIA. If they have operations in Canada, AIAC, operations in the US, AIA, because all three organizations are a good source of information and also provide a way of amplifying to the people we most must influence how integrated our industries are and how critical that is. It's an opportunity for us, I think, as we continue to go forward, to do three things. One, I think begin to talk about the success of the industry, not as a success or a Canadian success or a Mexican success, but as a North American success. I read with fascination yesterday about a Mexican company, Syncronia Logistica, which is using drones to deliver personal protective equipment in Mexico, and the company itself donating PPE to the frontline workers there. And that's not just a Mexican aerospace and defense industry success story. That's a North American aerospace and defense industry success story to be more active in telling. I think as well, we can do a better job of discussing amongst ourselves how we communicate with our respective elected officials about the importance of this industry and the things that we need, certainly in this time of crisis, in order to navigate to a position of health where we can once again contribute as successfully as we do to the economies in which we all participate actively. And then third, I would say that we might want to consider some of the mega Felipe talked about and look for ways perhaps not just of talking about enhancing the efficiency and the effectiveness of the cross-border trade across Canada, US, and Mexico, but certainly as we continue to move forward, we're going to see challenges, all of us, across our global supply chain writ large. And we might do well to think about ways of assessing those challenges as a North American collective and communicating our concerns with each other and with our third-party partners overseas.
Thank you, Remy. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next subject, which is harmonization of regional industry policy and regulations. You know, this industry is one of the highest regulated sectors in the world. How do you think harmonizing industry policy within the region could lead to a higher competitiveness? Could this apply also for industry certifications? How about a more extensive collaboration in the defense industry side among the three countries? I would like to start with comments from Remy on this subject. Remy, you're back again. I'm sorry.
No, perfectly fine. You know, certainly, I would challenge anyone to find an industry around the world that isn't more focused on global collaboration and harmonization as our industry is. And certainly, as I said before, the level of collaboration and harmonization that exists between Canada, US, and Mexico is too much of I think a secret that we really should try to publicize more to our elected officials. I'll offer two comments there that we can explore as we continue to go forward. One is that AIA and perhaps our partner organizations as well, but AIA certainly is very active in the process of developing engineering standards, regulatory compliance standards that are broadly accepted by the global aerospace and defense industry. And so we have an opportunity, I think, to open up communication amongst ourselves and establish additional standards that perhaps can help expedite and create more efficiencies in the North American supply chain. I would also point out, and Mike, I'm sure will touch on this as well, that while standard making is a good medium to long-term project, an immediate challenge that we have, of course, is restoring the health of civil aviation. And in that regard, certainly our industry, our organization, AIAC, and many of our other partners globally are working through an organization called ICC-AIA, the International Coordinating Council of Aerospace Industries Associations. This is the association that represents the manufacturing perspective on issues deliberated in ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization in Montreal. And right now, there's nothing more important that that group's doing than moving forward with its Aviation Recovery Task Force and trying to come up with perspectives and ideas of how to restart the international air transport sector and recover from the impact of COVID-19 on a coordinated global basis. In this regard, it's an opportunity for FEMIA to join its expertise and its leadership with that of AIA, AIAC, ASD, and a number of other associations around the world to make sure that we have a harmonized way forward to navigate COVID-19 to the benefit of civil aviation.
Thank you, Remy. Mike, your comments about harmonization of public policy and industry policy?
Yeah, excellent, thank you. And maybe I'll just bridge off the comments that Remy had made. You know, Canada and AIAC is the permanent vice chair of ICC-AIA, and it's an absolute wonderful opportunity to gather together with other associations to really provide input from a manufacturing perspective with respect to a lot of the regulations that are being put into place. And I couldn't agree with Remy more. One of the top priorities that we have, we went through a bit of an analysis and a bit of a consultation process with our members on, you know, what should be the main advocacy asks for the industry. And what quickly bubbled to the top was, how do you get the airlines back up and running at capacity? Because at the end of the day, the airlines is the end use customer of both are the products that we make and then also repair. So we're putting a lot of energies into ICAO and into ICC-AIA in order to get that up and running. I think, as I said before, COVID-19 has really shone a light on a lot of these cross-jurisdictional issues and the real need for harmonization. We see that even within our own country. We have a base of operations in different provinces, different countries. There's different personal protective equipment requirements which are there. There's a whole host of a range of items that need to be addressed. And I'm very optimistic that the North American sector, with the strong relationships that we do have, we can tackle some of these things. The other thing we really put on the government and our elected officials' radar is really the truly global nature of aerospace, because I think there's some misconceptions there where, you know, if one of the things I always say to politicians is, you know, you can't move a forest, you can't move certain other industries very easily, but aerospace is absolutely global and mobile and will move. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to keep putting that pressure on our governments to pursue this harmonization, to ensure that trade continues and to really put up an obstacle to protectionism.
Thank you, Mike. Felipe, comments about harmonization?
Yeah, that's key. As very well said Remy and Mike, this is a global industry. You know, we are not, our planes are flying all over the world. And if something happen, you know, have an immediate impact globally. And we have a lot of examples of that. So therefore, you know, the industry regulation and is a must. It's not an option. You know, one country cannot be, you know, specifically having a position against everybody else. That's impossible in this industry. You know, if an Airbus plane is made in Toulouse, France, needs to meet all the global regulations, no matter what. If a Boeing airplane is built in Seattle, I gotta, you know, meet all the regulations, no matter what. So therefore, you know, we should enforce and push, you know, our governments to understand that global nature of an industry and to align with that kind of global perspective, because our industry is serving all the world, not a particular country. And that's one subject. Second subject, you know, one great opportunity of cooperation happened now with the COVID-19, because specifically, you know, our three countries in North America were not, you know, particularly aligned in the way to manage this contingency, you know, among the three different countries. So this is a good example in how the three organizations of America, you know, the three of us, working together to, you know, encourage our governments to certainly align themselves and to manage the aerospace industry in a very similar way and approach. So I think we need to keep pushing in that direction, because we are in this together, you know, and the purpose of USMCA trade agreement is also, you know, a great opportunity for us to integrate furthermore in terms of regulation and management of the approvals among the three countries. An example, if we have an ADCAP certification of the company in Canada, that should apply for all the operations in North America. That's an example. But we need to keep pushing that to make this kind of certifications, authorizations more regional, at least in North America, and certainly that fully meet global standards and global requirements. And that's the nature of our industry, you know, that's the way it is. You know, we are not going to change that. So we rather need to take that opportunity to push our three countries. And now that the three organizations, the private organizations that represent the industry, we can push all together in the same direction in order to align the three countries and the three authorities in the same direction.
Thank you, Felipe. Okay, now we're going to move to the last subject of our open discussion before proceeding to some Q&A. And it's about human capital development collaboration. As you know, this industry sector relies on a constant human capital formation. What do you consider are the ways that the three North American countries can interact in order to develop a more sensible human talent that could lead to higher levels of competitiveness? So, Felipe, you know, certainly we would like to hear your comments about that.
Yeah, certainly human capital is a key. And this industry, aerospace industries, is highly complex and technologically advanced. So therefore, you know, our capital development, human capital development is a key for developing our industry. So we need to work together, the three countries, in providing training and development opportunities where the three countries, members of the three countries, can learn and can be developed and can be trained. And certainly, you know, we are looking in our industry a huge trend into different fields, like, for example, advanced materials. Composite is a good example, but, you know, we are seeing composites today that, you know, are completely different in terms of physico-mechanical properties than the ones that we were using 5 years ago. Another good example of that is IoT and machine learning and analytics. All that is coming to aerospace industry. We in automotive is very famous the subject about autonomous vehicles. I told everybody, hey, our plane has been autonomous since 10 years ago. You know, this is not new for us. So all of the newer planes are completely autonomous, you know, since 10, 50 years ago. So this is a reality in our industry. Those are good examples of fields, of technological fields that are moving into our industry. Another big subject is the low carbon, you know, propulsion systems. We are moving into more and more electric or hybrid or, you know, different kind of propulsions to reduce the carbon level. So certainly, you know, this is a very dynamic and moving industry. We, in order to remain competitive, we need to prepare our human capital, our people, to be prepared to manage and control and dominate, and also to research in all those new technological fields. And certainly that's going to be a particular characteristics of our aerospace industry, which is one of the most advanced technological industries in the world.
Remy, your comments on human capital formation collaboration.
So I agree with everything that Philippe said. I think we have a fundamental problem that we all share, and it starts with the fact that you know, generally speaking, we have the challenge of trying to make sure that we have enough young people that are interested in STEM fields: science, technology, engineering, math. And then those that choose that path, we then have to compete for their hearts and minds to get them to understand that the industry that we all love and that we're all a part of truly is the best opportunity for them to work with the best technologies, to have a global career, and not just find themselves perhaps working in the narrow confines of one geography or another, given the integrated nature of our industry. So on a practical basis, I look forward to talking more with FEMIA and with AIAC about AIA's effort to try to address that challenge. And that's the American Rocketry Challenge, which I referenced early on in my presentation, a student-focused competition oriented around model rocketry that not only provides students an opportunity to get hands-on with the type of principles and concepts and technology that our industry has to offer, but also gives them a chance to compete eventually with their counterparts overseas. There's an international rocketry challenge that has the winners of the US contest, the British, the French, and the Japanese contest that compete every year at Farnborough and at the Paris air shows. So I look forward to a time when we might be able to work together to not just crown perhaps an American champion, but also perhaps a North American champion, and even one step further, finding our Canadian and our Mexican friends and colleagues standing side by side with us on the tarmac at Farnborough and Paris, and increase the odds that it's a North American set of students that's going to come away with the trophy every year.
Thank you, Remy. You know, we look forward to do that as well. You know, we look forward to that. Mike, human capital formation.
So Remy, I also accept the challenge. We'd love to collaborate on the rocketry piece. I think that's a great idea. You know, the labor market human capital challenges was very core and pivotal of our Vision 2025 document, because at the end of the day, the aerospace industry, particularly in Canada, is dependent on the quality of people that we do have. So we had a little bit of a different challenge before COVID-19. We were in a bit of a labor crunch. Unfortunately, COVID-19 has flipped that around on its head. So I think that the challenges on the labor market side is, how do we not lose the opportunity over the next couple of years while the industry recovers to do a couple things? One, retrain folks, make sure that their training is up to where it needs to be, and that we don't miss out on that pipeline of human capital coming out of the schools. So we've been doing a lot of work at actually the secondary school system, so high school, working with guidance counselors. We found in some of our jurisdictions in Canada, the guidance counselors had the training manuals and promotional materials for different careers, so plumbing, welding, auto, and there was nothing for aerospace. And so we've been working very much at the secondary level to say, this is a good paying job above manufacturing average, you know, to the points that Remy had made on, it gives you a global perspective, opportunities that you could only imagine in an industry like ours. And I think our real challenge over the next little while is going to be inspiring those younger people to see a bright future, because there's a lot of negative news right now with respect to COVID-19. And as we were going across the country about a year ago, talking to students, that was one of the you know, the boom bust cycle that we're all aware of. How do we mitigate some of those misconceptions with students? So again, I see challenges obviously with COVID-19, but I think if we do it right, and we'd love to learn and collaborate with both of you, but if we do it right, we can have an opportunity for when the industry comes out of this, and it will, and it come out just as strong and stronger, and we're going to need the workers of the future for the new emerging technology, and you know, it's incumbent upon us to make that happen.
Thank you, Mike. Well, you know, with this, we finish our open discussion part of the webinar. We have a very, you know, few time. We don't have enough time for many Q&As, as we have a flurry of Q&As coming down to us. But I would say that the most common concern from the people that are asking questions is, you know, when is the industry, or what is your expectation for the industry to come back from this COVID-19 crisis? You know, so I don't know if somebody would like to start with this. Felipe, please.
Yeah, I think Remy and Mike have a similar analysis from 10 different analyst experts of the industry. But, you know, a week, for example, you know, I receive reports of weekly RTIs, in other words, you know, flight hours that are happening in the world. And we are seeing a recovery of between 2 to 5% per week. So that means that hopefully, you know, but next year, somewhere depends of how fast things are evolving. You know, we will see a recovery. Certainly, there are certain external situations external to the aerospace industry. One of them is the COVID-19 vaccine or COVID-19 effective treatment. So that is evolving as well, you know. So as faster the COVID-19 situation be managed globally, and certainly better treatments and decreasing in the death rate globally, as well as the development of the vaccine, that's going to be having a direct impact on the recovery of aerospace industry, especially in the flight, in the airplanes, you know, airlines, excuse me, sector. So all the different analysts look for the middle of the end of the next year for full recovery. And certainly that particular situation is going to be greatly affected by the COVID-19 treatment and vaccine release.
Do any of you expect any insourcing momentum from, especially from Asia, supplying restructuring as a result of COVID-19 into Mexico? Do you see any restructuring to relocate suppliers in the North American region because of this?
So I'll offer a comment there. As has been referenced earlier on in this webinar, you know, this industry is global to the core, right? And at the heart of that is making sure that that all of us at every stage of the supply chain have predictable, efficient, transparent access to the best products at the best price, because that is how ultimately we remain as competitive as we can be within our industry. In that regard, I think that there's always the consideration at various levels of the supply chain about ways of increasing that efficiency, increasing that predictability, managing the risk of having that global supply chain. I think COVID-19 has accelerated those concerns, perhaps added the geography question and raised it a little bit higher on that set of risks that all of our companies ultimately have to manage. I say all of that to say that I think that the trends are certainly pointing in that direction, but it's not assured. And therefore, it behooves all of us on this webinar, our three associations, all of the company representatives that are listening in, all the government officials that are listening in, to think about how we can best continue to move forward with better harmonization and integration across the North American supply chain, because ultimately it's that value proposition of the collaboration that the three countries working together represents that will determine the trend lines on insourcing to Mexico.
Yeah, another thing you mentioned, Remy, about the global feature of this industry. We have a question that in view of the strong anti-globalization winds that is going all over the world, how is this affecting the highly globalized aerospace industry? Do you see any direct effect on this industry? Who would like to take this question?
Maybe I'll just jump in there, Luis.
Yes, thank you, Mike.
COVID-19 has been changing at such a rapid pace that I think it's hard to for any of us to predict exactly where this will all end up. But to Remy and Philippe's point, we are a truly global industry, and I think we need to push back against that tide of protectionism that is, maybe bubbling in some areas. So I don't know where it's going to end up per se, but I think it, as a country that 80% of our output is exported, we're very keenly aware and sensitive to those issues. And maybe just to go back to the beginning question, I still, there's been a ton of different analysis, but again, it's how do countries work together to get airlines back up and running? Because that, to me, is going to be the most critical portion to getting everything else, the supply chain, everything else back to some resemblance of normal and thriving once again. So that's really what we're putting our effort into and advocating with our government for. And then also key supports from our government to to enable the Canadian industry to adapt and thrive.
One last question. Well, before we proceed to the last question, there's a lot of inquiries about getting or being part of the supply chain. We would like to mention that the best way to interact with the supply chain is contact either AIA, AIAC, or FEMIA to try to get into there. In FEMIA, we do have a supply chain development program that we have in place, and we have operated this for nearly 4 years. Remy mentioned a program that they're conducting there in the AIA, and I'm pretty sure the AIAC has something similar for that. So the best shot for those companies, please contact any of the three associations, and we definitely can help with that.
Actually, Luis, if I may, just on that point, the best place to initially start, I think, is the association in the country in which you operate, right? Because I will get periodically direct line communications from an individual company hoping that an association like mine will be able to play matchmaker. And unfortunately, at this point, we don't really have the facility to be that kind of a marketplace, a market clearing place for all of our companies. It's something we can work towards. But certainly, I think active involvement with FEMIA, active involvement with AIAC, then gives the three of us as associations the opportunity to coordinate and come up with the best, most efficient way to make sure that all of our members are able to reach each other, know more about each other, and find ways to collaborate.
That is correct. Thank you, Remy. I think it's a very, very pertinent comment. And finally, our last question. What about space? Space is the next trend on this. You know, actually, there are many things going on in space. How would you perceive and how would you foresee the collaboration between Canada, United States, and Mexico regarding a space industry? Felipe?
Comment about, in particular, one particular area, which is satellite development. You know, of course, US is probably the most developed country in the world in terms of space technology. Is the pioneer, has been the leader. You know, certainly there are other countries also that are very strong, like Russia and China. But in North America, no doubt about US has been the leader. But regardless that the overall subject about the space, in particular, satellite is a must for all the countries. So we have been, and especially in Mexico, we started the Aerospace, Mexican Aerospace Agency. Certainly US is NASA and Canada, I'm sure, have a similar organization. But certainly one particular need for all the countries in the world is satellite development. So I think in space there are several subjects, of course. We should collaborate each other, and especially in sharing the most advanced technologies and things like that, and sharing what is the best capability of each country, and certainly, you know, working together, especially working together in coordination with our space agencies to establish a particular projects of collaboration where the two countries can benefit each other for that collaboration. And we as a private organization, let's say, should encourage our government, our space agencies to in particular develop one or two specific projects to collaborate each other, and certainly to increase the level of engagement in that particular subject.
Any other comment on space, Remy, Mike?
Louis, maybe I'll just jump in there. Canada is a pretty big and vast place, and what we're seeing with COVID-19 is the need for strong communications and high-speed access to internet and things like that. So I would agree with Philippe. There is an opportunity and a bit of a appetite, I think, even more so now for the low Earth orbit, lower Earth orbit observation, etc. And I think there's a real window there. We've been really pushing our government to define a strategy on some of the space items. And I'll just mention it's been great to collaborate with NASA on the Lunar Gateway project, which Canada is also involved in. So I think there's some existing programs that are out there, but then there's a lot of opportunity for all three countries.
Thank you, Mike. Well, I certainly would like to thank every one of you, Mike, Remy, and Felipe. You know, it has been a very interesting webinar, and we certainly appreciate your involvement, your comments, and your collaboration. I foresee that this is just the continuing of a bigger and better collaboration between not only the three countries, but the three associations in particular. So thank you very much. And thank you to all the audience that joined us today. It was very good to have you on board. So have an excellent day, and see you in the next one. Thank you.